Warning: this video discusses topics of violence, torture, and murder. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening, my name is Dante and welcome back to my channel. On this channel, I discuss strange and obscure media. My past couple of videos have been deep dives on some of my favorite music genres. I've been having a few people ask when I would go back to discussing more depressing, disturbing stuff. Just know that's never gonna go away, just every now and then I need a palate cleanser for the sake of my mental health. Lucky for y'all though, tonight's topic is downright morbid. As I look back on some of the previous videos in the Not Safe for Life album series, of course, they get depressing, they might be disturbing, but they're not necessarily not safe for life. So I decided it's time to delve just a little bit deeper into some more depraved shit that will have us scratching our heads at where one draws the limit between art and real-life terrors. The first release I'll be discussing is pretty self-explanatory. Torture is the sole EP of a project from France known as Torture. This was a one-off release in 1996 featuring two members, Richard Rudeland under the stage name The Black Lord Belethrim, and second member Vorlok Draxstein. Both members were involved in numerous black metal and dark ambient projects within a collective known as Les Légions Noires, which translates to the Black Legions. Most people refer to this group as LLN. In short, LLN were a small community of obscure black metal musicians in France during the 90s who set out to create incredibly gritty, raw, underground music and held a certain level of exclusivity within the circle, not unlike Norwegian black metal artists at that time. There's been a decent bit of coverage online about LLN in music articles as well as from various metal YouTube channels. Let me know if you all would be interested in hearing me speak more about them in depth in another video. Anyway, my point being, this little project Torture was a part of that circle. The tape itself is only 23 minutes long and features 6 untitled tracks. Some of the tracks feature ambient and dungeon synth stuff, whereas others feature hammering, power saws, weapons scraping and slashing about, screaming, maniacal laughter, and overall just torturous sounds? I won't lie, I was pretty let down by this one. It was featured on various lists on Rate Your Music as being this disturbing piece of media shrouded in mystery, so I had the impression it was going to sound way more unsettling than it actually was. Personally, I find it just sounds straight up campy. I mean, the laughter literally sounds like Gollum. If Stalag is the haunted house walkthrough that you have to be 18 or older and sign a waiver to enter, this EP would be more like the haunted corn maze that you could bring your kids with you. I have a hard time believing the artists behind this were trying to take themselves seriously and probably put this out just for shits and giggles, yet there's some people out there who see this as being some really depraved stuff. Thankfully, it's pretty short, so if you decide to give it a listen just for a chuckle, it's not like you'll be spending much time on it. The same can't be said for the next selection, though. I am now going to tell you all about a project known as VONN. Not to be confused with black metal act VONN, this is a different project called VONN with 2 N's. The lineup of VONN is anonymous, but they are listed online as being a 4-person band from Norway that were active in the latter half of the 2000s. They were signed to a small Chilean label known as Funerard Posmo Group, which featured various funeral doom and drone artists primarily from South America. In 2006, they released their first album titled Victim 1 Agony. In 2010, they released a follow-up titled Victim 1 Ecstasy. Both albums are hour-long compositions that combine distorted drone metal riffing with sounds of whirring machinery, alarms, static, and industrial noises. On Agony, the vocals consist of a loop of a woman screaming in horror, while Ecstasy features sexual moans and samples from adult films. The concept behind the music is pretty grotesque, and I'm sure you can kind of guess where this is going. According to a review from doommetal.com, the CDR of Agony came with an insert that said the following. Almost from the beginning, the air was filled with the sweet smell of piss, shit, and blood. Not one creature in all of the universe had ever experienced what she had experienced that evening. She survived for just over an hour, praying through her feeble screams that she might be terminated soon. before her soul finally made its escape from her lifeless husk. A vein escaped into his grasp. Pity the bitch. We kept her in agonizing consciousness until we had no more use for her. It was a time not quickly forgotten by the ones who were forced to hear her screams. Yuck. The two albums were meant to be part of a trilogy, with Ecstasy being the second part in which the victim experiences intense pleasure, and Agony being the third and final part of the trilogy in which the victim is tortured to death. However, a third album for the trilogy was never released, and there has been no word on the project since 2010. I remember when I first heard about this band some years ago, I was able to track down an interview with the guitarist in which they spoke a bit about this concept as well as the recording process. I vaguely remember the interview stating that drums were recorded during the session for Agony, but these drum parts were removed entirely in the mixing process as the other artists felt they made the music sound more humane than they intended. Unfortunately, that interview has since disappeared from the internet, and I have not been able to find a physical copy of either album anywhere. Anyway, as you could imagine, the music is intended to be as extreme and unpleasant for the listener as possible. The combo of screams, noise, and droning guitars meld into an intense assault on the senses with the purpose of making you feel what the victim is experiencing. To give credit where it's due, VONN succeeded in doing that, and I think anybody who has heard their work can agree it's incredibly difficult to listen to. I think I managed to get through maybe 15 minutes of Agony one time, and even that was a bit much for me. Noisy elements and scary concept aside, listening to any kind of drone for a full hour becomes a strenuous task for me. Hope that woman is okay though. I can't imagine she was having a very good time regardless. Maybe she had a blast recording those screams and sex sounds, who the hell knows? Alright, what better way to say best for last than with an album about a serial killer? DEATHPILE is a power electronics project by Jonathan Kennedy, a US artist who previously worked as the art director for Relapse Records. Kennedy has had a variety of noise, industrial, and metal projects dating back to the 90s. From what I've gathered from info online, DEATHPILE was primarily a solo project for Kennedy, though some of his releases would feature additional synth work from outside musicians. DEATHPILE's final album, GR, was released in 2003, and from what I could find online was most well known from the project. Musically, the album is pretty straightforward, consisting of shrill noise textures with Kennedy's hateful shouts and various samples of dialogue. The lyrical concept of the album is based on the murders of a serial killer named Gary Ridgway, aka the Green River Killer. Ridgway was convicted for murdering 49 teenage girls and women around Seattle and Tacoma, Washington between the years of 1982 to 1998. Though his actual number of victims is believed to be over 70. He would target sex workers and runaways along the Pacific Highway South, lure them to his home to hook up, and then strangle them to death in a chokehold. Kennedy's lyrics are told from Ridgway's point of view, detailing hateful monologues about sex addiction, disgust towards his victims, and his desire to commit violent acts. The execution of these disturbed ramblings with harsh distortion paints a picture of the inside of Ridgway's mind, forcing the listener to imagine themselves as the killer. What I would consider to be the most effective point in the album would be a track titled Known Victims, which, simply put, is a woman listing off all of Ridgway's known victims as oscillating noise tones gradually build up in the mix. I can't really say this album was my cup of tea. There wasn't much in the way of variety and sound to really keep me engaged. Then again, it could also be that noise and power electronics just aren't my forte. I do appreciate the attention to detail that was given to Ridgway's story and how it was incorporated into the concept of the album. The rage in Kennedy's delivery is palpable and feels genuine, as if the tracks were lost recordings of the killer himself. In that regard, I did find GR to be an effective and disturbing album. Anyway, that wraps up these selections for tonight. I can't say that any of these are particularly fun to listen to, but if nothing else, I had fun learning about them. If you liked this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. You can also support me by following me on Instagram, TikTok, and Reddit. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your evening, and lock your fucking doors. He does this thing that he always likes to wreak havoc when he's in the room when I'm trying to record, and scratching at the door to be let out. But then I'll let him out, close the door, and he'll be scratching at the door to be let in.